Hey everybody, happy Saturday, or whatever day you guys are viewing this. This is our last oral presentation for History 1100. My presentation is about the two sides of Holy War and about the First Crusade. And yeah, let's dive right in because we don't have a lot of time. The Crusades started by the Pope, who was a false Pope because he wasn't really in Italy, he was in France. He said that he said God wills it. He had a bunch of popes and bishops in the room, and that was it. But that's actually not how it happened. Basically, there were some socioeconomic problems within Europe at the time. There was some different bastions of Christianity kind of moving for power. This pope thought he had power, but he might not have had power, and this other pope thought he had power and really did. Anyway, but we see this pope unify all of Europe with this declaration of war. And it's kind of unorganized in the beginning, but it leads into this huge troop buildup, and they move into the Middle East, and they go after Jerusalem, even though the first 400 years, or 400 years prior, they were totally cool. Jerusalem was good. If you were a Christian there, you could go there and see your holy items and lands and worship for free. But you might have to pay a couple bucks here and there, but you could do it. And you might encounter a little bit of prejudice, but you could do it. So let's look at the sources. Let's jump right into this. The first one, source one, The Curious Crusaders by Ibn Munkif. In this text, we see how he thinks of Christians. He says that they have virtues, but the virtues are only courage and fighting, nothing else. I mean, I think those are two good virtues, but he kind of puts it just above like animalistic proletarian virtues. And so he has these false pretenses of what Christians are, and he becomes good friends with the son of King Fulk, and they share bonds of amity and friendship. Without getting too much into it, they kind of are friends, and they call each other brothers. And this is pretty unique because he has kind of different beliefs about what Christians stand for, but he's friends with one. So kind of ironic. Since we have a lot to get into, I'm going to move quickly into source number 2 because this one was visited in Hollywood with the movie Kingdom of Heaven. Orlando Bloom's character is surrendering the Christian armies to Saladin, and he asks, after the surrender, he says, "What is Jerusalem worth to Saladin?" And Saladin responds, "Nothing," and keeps walking away. And then, but he turns around quickly and he says, "Everything. Everything. It's worth everything to him." But he gets fed up with all the loss of life and all this stuff. But basically, in reality, this conversation did happen, but it was completely different. Basically, the Christian side of the house said this when proposed, like they were proposing to kind of like let their citizens go for free, or go free. He said this. I want to read this text out because it's very powerful. "But if we see that death is inevitable, then by God we shall kill our children and our wives, burn our possessions so as to not leave you with a dinar," their money, "or a single man or woman to enslave. When this is done, we shall pull down the sanctuary of the rock, and the Masajid al-Aqsa and the other sacred places, slaughtering the Muslim prisoners we hold, 5,000. They're just going to kill them. Killing every horse and animal we possess. Then we shall come out to fight you like men fighting for their lives. When each man before he falls dead kills his equal, we shall die with honor or win a noble victory." So what this says to Saladin is, hey man, we're going to fight to the death, and we're not going to let you have a single thing in Jerusalem. Not our women, not our children, not even your holy texts. Nothing. And so basically, Saladin's like, oh man, all right, I should probably listen to you. But he kind of comes back, and he's a solid negotiator, and he finances his rebuilding of Jerusalem by making every Christian pay 10 dinar. This is crucial, and also speaks to a little bit of empathy. But I don't think this decision was driven by empathy. I think it was driven by basically an underpinning of his rebuilding of Jerusalem because it was pretty much in ruins. Because they talk about how trebuchets and fire and blood and these texts are pretty wild, and they showcase the utter disarray of war very well. Okay, so let's move along to source number 3, and this is when the Muslims, they capture the actual cross, which is like the holy scepter of the Christian faith. And it was said to have been the actual, it was built from the actual wood of the cross that Christ was crucified on. And so they talk about how it was adorned, and they talk about after they get through Jerusalem and they take it, and they talk about how once this idol is taken, the Christians are pretty much, that's it. That, you know, they have no more motivation, but it fuels anger in the future, obviously, because it's like the most holy thing that they possess. And but then they talk about kind of the post-war thing, and then they say that the Frankish women, the Frankish people kind of became expatriates, or I can't say that correctly, expatriates. I guess that's expatriates, whatever. So then I want to read this text just because I think it's interesting. I didn't realize there was this kind of almost a pilgrimage of prisoners in a way, or pilgrimage of people that were subordinated. They arrived by ship, 300 lovely Frankish women, full of youth and beauty, assembled from beyond the sea and offering themselves for sin. They were expatriates coming to help expatriates, ready to cheer the fallen, sustained in turn to give support and assistance. So, interesting text there, and that brings us to the end of the Muslim accounts, and we see a general understanding of, you know, what they believed in, and yeah, sure, it was codified in reality, but in a sense, though, there was a lot of malice, hate, and things that weren't really godly, or things that weren't really religious. So let's look at the first one. So the first Christian source is A History of Jerusalem by Peter Trudeau. In this historical text, we see the ultimate zeal shared by both sides of the battlefield, but specifically in Renault Porchet. He was captured and held in a drab, disgusting cell. And the Muslims, they were going to kill him, but before they killed him, they said, "Hey, let's see how much we can get for this guy. You know, let's see what we can ransom him for." So he says, "My lords, it matters not if I die, and I pray, my brothers, that you pay no ransom for me, but be certain in the faith of Christ and the holy scepter of that God is with you and shall be forever. You have slain all the leaders and the bravest men of Antioch, and namely 12 of their emirs and 15,000 noblemen, and no one remains to give battle with you or defend the city." So that says a lot. Basically, he says, "Don't pay for me, please don't. You know, these guys are already defeated. Don't worry about it. I'll see you guys. God wills it. Peace out." You know. And so the Muslim emir says, he asks his interpreter, "What did he say? What did he just say to the Christians?" And the Muslim said, he says, "Nothing good concerning what he said." And you know what? They killed him. They cut off his head. They give him a chance to repent first, but then he says, he completely denies your God. He also refuses your worldly goods and offerings. The Muslims are saying, hey, listen, we won't kill you. Just deny your God and bend the knee to our God, worship our God and gods. He said no. And so they had some Christian prisoners too, and they encircled them. They tied them all up naked and put them on wood and hay all around, and they torched them. They absolutely lit them on fire. And so this sight infuriated all the other Christians. And so basically, this really drove both sides pretty wild. And so outside the walls and inside the walls, we see Christians mocking each other, and this is I kind of got a laugh out of this, but it is really, it's all about war and death, so it shouldn't be funny. But the sight of the Saracens, the sight of the Christians parading and praying and mourning, so to speak, caused the Saracens to parade likewise on the walls of Jerusalem, blaring insignia of Mohammed and erecting standards and opinion. In the meantime, the Saracens stood on the walls and screamed and blared with horns and performed all kinds of acts of mockery. So what do we see there? On both sides, we see utter disrespect and just a lack of understanding for what was really going on. they were really screwing with each other, and it's not a good thing to say. Moving on quickly because I'm already at 10 minutes here. Source number 2 is Fulcher's History, and it covers a lot. And due to the time, I'm not going to really cover it so well in depth. But I want to cover two things. One stanza right here, with drawn swords. They're talking about when the Christians retake Jerusalem, and this showcases the anger within, or the malice behind their sword swings. With drawn swords, our men ran through the city, not sparing anyone, even those begging for mercy. They crowed. The crowd fell just as rotten apples fall from shaken branches and acorns from swaying oaks. I mean, wow! If you just take a second and think about that, no mercy. Just they were ready to take it back. And then he talks about this thing called right of possession, which is interesting because when they took Jerusalem back, what do they do? Okay, we have this, but no one really had a home and no one really had any belongings. So what do? They just went in and took whatever they wanted, and they called it the right of possession. So you come into this house and it's yours. Kind of weird, and that's why I wanted to showcase that. And the last source, let me just go to my notes here. It was A History of Deeds Done by the Sea by William Tree. In this text, we see so much malice and misunderstanding, just like the past historical texts. I want to bring about a couple key points how they misunderstood each other. In the text, he said the following blasphemous things. And we can see how the Muslim faith tradition is merely, he thinks of it as merely superstition. And the reason for the title of the Caliph is shown as follows. Muhammad, their prophet, or rather the destroyer who first drawn the peoples. Oh, man. Oh, is this? Okay, it's still going. Sorry, my computer fell asleep. I will wrap this up, though, quickly. I know I'm almost out of time here. But he called it a superstition. He said, who was the first to draw the peoples into the East to this kind of superstition, had as his immediate successor one of the disciples named Abu Bakr. So he called the religion a superstition. I mean, obviously, I don't know how else you can deeply discredit someone's faith tradition by calling it a superstition. So yeah, let's wrap this up. The Christians, just like the Muslims, had false pretenses that were codified on wrong things, hatred, and misunderstanding. And I want to bring this back to a human level because this is some seriously heavy history. Let us not forget how many lives we lost. 1 to 3 million people over the Crusades. Just think about that for a second. Just a second. I mean, these are, fathers, mothers, husbands, wives. They're someone's kid, It's absolutely appalling that the Crusades started from less than a moral or religious justification, and the Christians were pretty much at fault for that, despite some provocations from some small Muslim sects. But both sides had a solid understanding of who the enemy was. They were, however, subject to the biases in their beliefs and this false pretense of religious zeal. In the earliest Crusades, Muslims and Christians were well aware of who the other side was and what they thought they stood for. But oftentimes we see the opinions were incorrect and the assumptions were just flat wrong. It's kind of like how other countries still think about other countries. We think of Russia, we think of Vladimir Putin. But not every Russian is like Vladimir Putin. And I'm sure people in Mexico think of Donald Trump. But people realize that not all Americans are like Donald Trump. But we kind of see the opposite thing in these times. Okay, you're a Christian, you got to be like these, false pretexts. Oh, you're a Muslim. Oh, you're some sort of barbarous guy. So anyway, those are my closing remarks, guys. And I hope you guys all had a great weekend, and it was fun. This class was a lot of fun. I learned a lot from the books and the texts. So I just want to thank you guys for watching, and have a great day.